for joining us this morning for a virtual outing in Las Trampas Regional Wilderness with a wonderful board member, Bob Johnson. My name is Jessie. I'm the Director of Marketing and Communications at Greenbelt Alliance. For those of you who aren't familiar with our work, our mission is to educate, advocate, and collaborate to ensure the Bay Area's lands and communities are resilient to a changing climate. The work we do to protect the Bay Area's natural and agricultural lands, while also creating thriving communities as well as these free outings, are made possible by you. So please donate today, which you can do so securely on our website at greenbelt.org/donate. During the outing, please feel free to ask questions, which we'll answer at the end. You can use the chat function or Q&A function for that. And please note that we will be recording this so that we can send you that link after the outing in a follow-up email, which will hopefully land in your inbox later today. With that, I will hand it over to Ken, who is our fantastic outings leader, to get things started. Thank you.
Well, I'll introduce Bob, though he is the one person that needs no introduction, I think. Bob Johnson is a Greenbelt Alliance outings leader and has been active on various committees since becoming a Greenbelt Alliance board member in 1991. That's 30 years, I just realized. Ugh. He had no gray hair 30 years ago. He has also worked with Urban Advantage to produce photorealistic visualizations of better urban design. Previously, he worked for many years as a securities analyst in Japan, as well as the Bay Area. With outings leader Janet Byron, he co-wrote the book Berkeley Walks, featuring self-guided urban tours. With that, I'll turn it over to Bob.
Thank you very much, Ken, and thank everyone for joining us today. Today we're going to explore one of my favorite Bay Area wildflower hikes, which is at Las Trampas Regional Wilderness in the East Bay Regional Park District. It has over 416 acres of hills around Bollinger Canyon, and there's an entry road from San Ramon. Let's go ahead. Here's another nice Greenbelt slide, by the way, about our mission at Greenbelt Alliance. And Greenbelt Alliance has played a big part over the years in helping found and expand many of our regional park districts. So anyway, there's, as I said, there's over 460 acres at Las Trampas Regional Wilderness. And it's actually a park with good views, with diverse plant environments and rock outcrops, some of which contain ancient fossils. The Las Trampas is adjacent to East Bay mudlands, which are over here, Sandland Watershed. And the trails then connect up through those East Bay mudlands, going further west to Chabot and Redwood Regional Park. So there's a very large area of contiguous open space here. That's a great thing to have for plant and animal diversity. The park name is Spanish for traps or snares, which were set here years ago to catch game such as elk. Our total hiking distance will be just under 5 miles, and the high point is at 1,827 feet up here at Las Trampas Peak. There's a few steep climbs and a fair amount of up and down, but we'll do it all very easily in less than an hour, thanks to the wonders of virtuality. I did the hike in about 3 hours or so last Sunday, but I was stopping to take lots of photos along the way. This week and in coming weeks, the mix of flowering plants will change. So things that I didn't see will come out, and some early plants seen here will disappear. But for the next several weeks, it's still going to be a great place to visit. So our starting point is here. We come up from San Ramon. You could come up from Crow Canyon Road and then turn onto Bollinger Canyon Road and come up this way. And then the park road ends at this point. The actual hike, we will take trails that go up along the stream and then climb all the way up to Las Trampas Peak. And then the way back, we'll come back a slightly different route. So it will be mostly a loop trail with one stem off this way, if you will. Okay, well, here's more or less the end of the paved road. The Bollinger Canyon Road would have gone on that way, and we're at the main staging area, which is just off to the left from here. Oops. But I said left and I hit the left button instead of the right button. So there's the parking lot, which is a partly shaded parking lot. And when it's popular, like last Sunday, the parking lot gets full, but you can park back along the wide shoulder of the road on one side, and then also a little farther back is an unpaved overflow parking lot. At the staging area parking lot, there are restrooms, and there are also these information plaques, which are definitely worth looking at. This one shows the 3 main habitats, and the different habitats are one of the things that makes this park interesting to visit. The light green shown on the map are the grasslands. The orange area is Chaparral, and we will definitely see some of that. And then the darker green is the Oak Bay woodland. Now we're going to be going up through this woodland area initially, but I would like to call that kind of a 4th habitat, in that it's along Bollinger Creek. So it's a riparian woodland, and the mix of plants is a little different than we'll find in most of the other woodlands in the park. There's also a plaque on the geology. This was an ancient sea, and most of the rocks were laid down between 13 and 8 million years ago in the Miocene epoch. The rocks then, about 3 or 4 million years ago, began to be thrust upward, and they were kind of turned and faulted and so on to get to their present form. But so they were mostly rocks that formed under a fairly shallow sea that was there for a long time. And so there are things like sandstone and so on, which formed under the sea. And there's some places where you can see outcroppings of the rocks. These are some of the animals that could be in the park. I didn't see any of these last Sunday, but we saw a few birds. But you might see some animals when you visit the park if there are fewer people around. Apparently, once in a while, there's even mountain lions. So just up from the staging area here is the entrance to trails. Now, this paved road is not the way we're going to go. The paved road goes up to Rocky Ridge. We're going to go on the dirt trail off to the right here. So there's a signpost there just beyond the gate. That's this signpost. It tells us that we're going to go, if we go to the right, we're going to go on the Bollinger Creek Loop Trail. So we passed the gate and we're starting off. Although it's going to be mostly woodland, there are some grassy areas here and there, some openings along the trail, and we have to go through another gate. But before we do that, so our first flower to identify is not a native. It is something called clocks or flaree. It's a European plant. There's several forms of it. They're called erodiums, and they're found just about everywhere in the Bay Area and grasslands because they're spread so much by grazing animals. But they have you can't see them well in this picture, but they have very finely divided leaves like filigree, so they got the name flaree. And the seeds are for this little flower, it has a seed that's quite long. There's a little bulb at the end of the seed, and then this long, like needle-like flower. And it looks like kind of like the clock of a hand, and that's why they call them also clocks. So from one of the grassy areas, there's a view out towards Rocky Ridge, which the high point of Rocky Ridge is actually in the East Bay Mudlands. But with a permit, you can go on that way. So there's yet another plaque here, this one about Bollinger Creek and some things I found there. I've never seen the tree frogs. I have seen once in a while some newts. And we're going to head into the woodlands. One of the woodland plants that's quite common is this shrub, which is snowberry, which is Symphoricarpus albus levigatus, a pretty long name. A little bit later, it will have kind of cute little pink flowers, and these will be followed up by white berries, and which give it the name snowberry. Apparently they're edible, but they have kind of a soapy taste, so maybe the birds like them. as I mentioned, the trail would be mostly through this riparian woodland. So we'll be going mostly shady with some ups and downs. Now, this is something to be avoided that occurs a number of places along the trail. And I wonder if somebody, I'm going to ask from time to time if you can help identify things, if you know what it might be. So if you go, I think, to the chat feature, it should be maybe at the bottom of your screen. You can click on chat and you can type in if you know the name of this plant.
Yep, and we're already getting answers, Bob.
Okay.
So everyone is saying poison oak.
Poison oak. Okay, good. I'm glad everybody knows to identify this plant. Leaves of 3, let them be. The scientific name is Toxicodendron diversilobum. It comes in, the leaves can vary somewhat, although they're almost always in groups of 3. The form of the plant can vary. It could be like a ground cover. It could be a vine climbing up a tree. It could be a shrub. It's quite diverse, and it's apparently in the same family as lacquer, the plant that they make lacquer from. And so lacquer workers have to be careful because it's kind of, the fumes are kind of toxic. And in the East, there's a very similar plant, related plant that's called poison ivy rather than poison oak. Anyway, Toxicodendron. They say that with the rash that you get, if it takes about 2 weeks to get rid of it. But with treatment, you can get rid of it in 14 days. Anyway, this is these are the leaves of the most common tree in this riparian woodland. And I wonder if you know the name of the tree that produces these long green fragrant leaves seen in the picture. Go ahead and type it into chat.
Give people a few seconds to answer here, but it looks like, again, we have consensus around it being a bay laurel.
Bay laurel, right, bay laurel. And good, a bay laurel is related to the bay leaves that are used in cooking. And you can use these in cooking. I had a wreath of them that lasted for many years that I used, but they're much more potent than the culinary bay. And so you have to be aware of that. It's also related to the laurel of classical Roman Greece, the laurel which they made wreaths of, or that you put on the head of the victor, and things like noble laureate and so on. The fruits of the bay laurel, which a few weeks ago we saw lots and lots of them falling on the ground in one place. I mean, they're maybe from last season, but anyway, the fruits have a kind of pit in the middle, in the center, and Native Americans did eat them. I don't think people eat them much these days, but it's related to the avocado plant. Here's another shrub. This one, unfortunately, they're not in bloom yet. This is the wild rose of California, and they have pink kind of open flowers that they're fairly pretty, and they're primarily in woodlands. They don't grow particularly in sunny areas. Now this flower is called the woodland star, and it's a very pretty fringed white flower that grows mostly in shady areas. Once it can be sometimes a little bit out in the sun areas, but not in real dry places. And the scientific name is Lithophragma affine. Lithos is rock or stone, and phragma, fragment. So maybe it means that the roots were so powerful that they could break rocks. Seems kind of strange for such a little flower like this, but maybe that's how it got the name. And there are a number of seasonal streams that come down from the side to flow into the mainstream. And this year they're all dry, and there's no mud on any part of the trail like you usually might find at this time of year. Okay, here's another one for you to identify. It has shiny flowers, the shiny yellow flowers. If you know this one, could you type it into the chat?
Ooh, not as many responses this time.
No responses.
We have
Okay.
one. We have one.
Okay.
It's Tenna or Tina. Ooh, two now that both say buttercup.
Buttercup is right. Very good. So these are shiny buttercups. There are various species in many different places around the world. The California species that's common, the particular California species that's common here, has 10 petals, where most of the other species have just 5 petals. So this is Ranunculus californico is the scientific name, and ranunculus means little frogs, because it likes to grow in wet places, or at least in places where the soil retains moisture fairly well. So this riparian woodland corridor is fairly narrow. The stream is just down here to the right, and right the other side of that is actually open grassland, and so we see a cow grazing there. In some places, the woodland is a little wider. Here is the Bollinger Creek. That's just kind of a trickle this year. It's rather sad, and a little farther upstream, it's dry. So there's between there, the point we'll see later, and this point, there must be a little spring somewhere, but unfortunately, there's not a lot of water this year. And as I said, off to the other side, the riparian woodland is not very wide, so we can clearly see there's a big grassy slope off to the other side. Well, they do allow horses on this trail, so you have to watch your step. I found it a little awkward because it's pretty narrow trail when some equestrians come along, but horses are allowed. Bicycles are not allowed on this trail, but doesn't mean that they don't try and use it. Anyway, those are some horse droppings. Now the trail used to go kind of straight ahead here, but they have closed that off and have us loop around to the left, up and around. So we often kind of do loop up and around. And I think it's probably, maybe there was some erosion, or they felt they needed to restore some plants along this area, and so close that part of the trail. This is a fairly common plant that kind of grows along the ground, and it's called bedstraw. It's gallium, and they would actually stuff their bedding, stuff it into their bedding. And it's kind of funny when you touch the plant, you know, along the stems and leaves, it has almost like a sticky feel, like a sort of Velcro feel to it. It's rather strange. They're both native and non-native species around it. I'm not an expert to identify which is which, though. Now this diminutive fern is called the goldback fern, and I don't know, maybe Ken can clarify. On the underside of the leaf, there's this little, this kind of yellow powder, and I don't know if that's spores or if it's something else, but I'm sorry it's not in better focus, but this is my handkerchief, which was put, I held up underneath the leaf, and you can see they made the impression on the handkerchief. It's not that common a fern, but you do find it in a number of places in the woodlands. So we're continuing on this trail through the riparian woodland, and because it's woodland, there are lots of trees, so you have to watch out for the tree roots as well when you're walking along. This plant is called wood mint, and we can see how it's related to the to mints, in that it has these quilted leaves that are fairly common in the mint family. Now, the smell of this one when you rub the leaves is, I would call it interesting. To me, it's interesting, but not that unpleasant. Some people find it very unpleasant. In any case, it's not something that you would put into your iced tea. And the scientific name is Stachys ajugoides. Okay, here's another one. We can see if you can guess the name of this one. The woodland flowers like this one tend to bloom fairly early because perhaps because they're trying to bloom before the canopy gets more covered with leaves and reduces the sunlight. So does anybody know the name of this little white flower?
I think people do.
Okay.
Milkmaids.
Milkmaids, they are very good. The milkmaids, because of the, I assume it's because of the color, the milky color of the flower. And it's a little hard to see in these, but sometimes the leaves have little indentations of them. And it's like something took a little bitty bite out of them. And so the scientific name is dentaria, which comes from the word dental. So earlier we identified the buttercups, and here are lots and lots of the buttercups that go all the way up here in this grassy area. So this is obviously a place where the soil keeps wet enough for the buttercups to keep blooming very nicely. And it's an early flower, but it has a fairly longish blooming period. Okay, here's another one. Do you know the name of this one? One of the plants that you can eat.
Our marketing manager is watching, and she chimed in and very quickly and said, "Miner's lettuce."
Miner's lettuce, yeah, well, I gave you a big hint when I said the 49ers ate it. And some people do grow them in the gardens to eat. They don't have a lot of taste, but then lettuces normally don't. And I guess if you didn't strike it rich, you know, you needed to eat something, and miner's lettuce is pretty plentiful. The scientific name is Montia perfoliata, and I think the perfolia is because the stem with the flower on it perforates the center of this main leaf, which is a fairly unusual thing. Usually the leaves go off from the stem rather than all the way around it. This is a more common fern than the goldback fern. This is wood fern. The two most common ones, I think, around here are wood fern and sword fern. And I didn't see a sword fern along this particular route. The difference between the two is the wood fern, the leaves are much more finely divided than those of the sword fern. But they're both pretty common in woodlands. If you look up, you can see the forest camellia. It's mostly bay laurel along this trail. There's also some oaks. This is farther upstream on Bollinger Creek. Some more buttercups growing there. And the path goes over the creek bed. And so there's a big pipe here to bring the water through, but there's no water flowing, unfortunately. So it's kind of sad this year that we have so little water. Well, finally, we're going out. We're leaving the riparian woodland behind, and we're going to go up into the grasslands on our trail. So when we're out in the open a bit more, it's a bit easier to see the tree forms. Now, here's a tree. This is only, it does get larger than this, so it's only medium size. And the common name for this tree is the nickname for another one of our 50 states. So I hope that's enough of a hint. Do you know what kind of tree this is?
Oh, we have a few differing ones. So
why don't you read them off? What names you
sure. So I'm not going to say names just I don't want to embarrass. Okay. So someone said California live oak, ? Is that right?
We'll keep reading
okay.
names. Just read
Other people have said buckeye, then buckhorn, and then another buckeye.
Okay. Buckeye is the tree. We're going to see the live oak in a moment, but this is a buckeye tree, so it's for the Buckeye state, which is Ohio, but we have our own species, which is Aesculus californica. So, so this is the California one. The fruits are, first it's going to get plumes of white flowers that are slightly fragrant, which fairly soon. And then the fruits are rounded a little bit bigger than walnuts, and the outer skin is brown, but that skin will tend to kind of split in one place vertically and make this slit opening with the lighter part underneath, so that it looks kind of like the eye of a buck. And that's how it got the name. So our trail, we were coming up this way, and then we get to this wider trail, and there's a signpost there. Here's that signpost. So that signpost is pointing, the arrow pointing this way, as if we were coming on that trail and going this way. That's the way to Las Trampas Peak, which is where we want to go. And the arrow pointing left is pointing back down the way we've come from, and that's the Bollinger Creek Loop Trail. And that's a no bicycle trail, but bicycles are allowed on this wider trail. And I don't think we saw any last Sunday, but they are allowed. So here is the coastal live oak. So the coastal live oak, if you look, compared to the buckeye, it has shorter but wider leaves. Here's the inset are the leaves. When they first come out, they're light green, and then they turn darker green. And it's live oak, it's because they keep it's not deciduous. They keep the leaves all year. And the leaves are curved down around the edges, and they've got teeth around the edges. So this is a good way to identify the live oak. Oh, and by the way, so there's the live oak, and just to the right here is the buckeye. So you can see how the leaves are rather different. They're longer, narrower leaves. The oak tree is a very valuable tree. It provides food and habitat for all kinds of birds, insects, mammals, reptiles, and so on. The Native Americans gathered the acorns as a staple food, and they had to wash them a lot to get out the tannins. And so there are millions of oaks of number of different species in California, but we are losing oaks. These are two. I think they're dead. I mean, this looks from the leaves, I'd say this is a dead live oak. There is a fungal disease called sudden oak death syndrome that is killing off millions of oaks in California, and some other trees as well. Some scientists think that the fire suppression of many years helped the fungus to spread more. But it's something, I mean, you could treat an individual tree, but you can't treat, to try and protect it, but you can't treat millions of trees. Another tree that is like the oaks is found in many places around the world is the maple tree. And we have some species of maple. This is the big leaf maple, Acer macrophylla. And in the inset here, the leaves have just come out, so they're not quite as big as they're going to get eventually, but it has these big bunches of flowers hanging down, which will eventually become the maple squirts that most people know from other trees, from other maples. The lupine is a species that's very common in California. We have dozens of different species. This is one of the smallest ones, which is called dove lupine. We like to call it mini lupine because they're pretty small flowers. The scientific name is Lupinus bicolor because the flowers are white and blue. They're two colors. This is almost right next to that is this bigger, more intensely colored lupine. And I'm not sure which species is. There's so many dozens of species. It may be sky lupine or it may be some other species. Initially, they gave the name lupinus, which comes from lupus for wolf, because the plant often grew in places where the soil wasn't that good. And so they thought that the plant was robbing the nutrients from the soil like a wolf. But actually, as Glenn Cater says in his book, they got it wrong. They're able to grow in places with poor soil, but they actually fix nitrogen into the soil. So they're helping the soil rather than hurting the soil. But lupus is a very pretty plant, and it's in the pea family. And so they get the things that look like pods after they bloom, like peas and beans and so on. And the flowers you can see are the leaves are palmate, which means they go out like, the leaves go out like fingers. So we've come up a ways on this road going towards Las Trampas. Now we're looking back to where we've come from. So we're looking back towards Bollinger Canyon. From this view, there's no signs of human structures. We're looking off to the west in this view as we get a little bit higher. We can't, I don't know if we'd be able to see the bay or things around the bay, but it was just a little bit hazy last Sunday, so we can't see quite that far, but we get some nice views. So here's another plant that you can try and guess the name of. It's a yellowish orange flower, and it grows in the grasslands. And the common name of the flower is named after a part of a musical instrument. So somebody want to put in the chat what they think this one is?
We have various forms of fiddle coming in here. So we have fiddle neck, fiddle
Yes.
back, fiddle stick.
Well, you're all very close. It's a fiddle neck, yes, from the fiddle, because as it keeps flowering, the flowers kind of spiral around like this, so it looks like that part that spirals around at the end of a fiddle or violin. And the scientific name, though, is Amsinkia. Well, we have to keep going uphill. We're actually going towards a peak after all. It's actually steeper than it looks in this photo. But fortunately, Sunday it wasn't too hot, so we were able to hike it up without too much difficulty. I didn't have to stop too often, catch my breath. Along the trail as we go up, there's this plant which is called black sage. It's in the salvia family, Salvia mellifera, and I'm not sure why it's called black sage, because it has pale lavender flowers and green leaves, but for some reason it's got the name black sage. It has a fragrance that's, I wouldn't call it sweet and lovely, but it's kind of pleasantly strange, I would say. Then, being a little earlier than I usually go on the trail, we saw lots of this flowering shrub called Ceanothus. This one is the white version. There's maybe 4 different species you can find in the Bay Area. This one is Ceanothus cuneatus, or buckbrush, that has these white flowers. And they're fairly fragrant, and usually lots of bees humming around when they bloom. They're also called wild lilacs, so they're not actually related to the lilacs. Well, as we go up, it's nice to see this big, very healthy looking oak tree with a big trunk. This is one of the live oaks. So I don't know, we just hope it doesn't kill off all the oaks. Okay, here's another one to guess. This one is a shrub. The flower's already finished and it's early to put out its berries. Do you know what kind of shrub this is with the spiky looking berries on it?
Is it gooseberry?
It is a gooseberry. It's kind of ribes. Supposedly it has little thorns along the stems, and it has these kind of spiky fruits. Now, supposedly the fruits are edible, but they're so small, I don't know if it'd be worth the trouble of trying to get them out from these spiky shells that they're in. Again, we're looking back. We've come up a fairly steep part of trail, so we've come up fairly high, and the view is partially off to the west, and so there's a part of the view is outside the park, and somebody has built a house there in the center of our view, and they had to put a bright orange roof on it. I don't know why. It kind of sticks out like a sore thumb, but maybe they want to make sure that if there were a rescue helicopter had to come, that they could find them. This is extremely common shrub in around the Bay Area. It's one that tends to grow in grassy areas, sunny areas, let's say. This is the coyote bush, which is Baccharis piloularis. And it's not exactly a beautiful bush, but one of the nice things about it, one of the plus things, is that it has white flowers which bloom in summer and on into autumn. So it has flowers in a time when hardly anything else has flowers on it. And it's also dioecious plant, which means there are separate shrubs for the male and female. Most trees and shrubs, the male and female parts of the flowers are on the same tree, but this one has separate male and female. This is the Indian cucumber, also known as manroot, which has lots of white flowers at this point. It gets fruits later. It's very viney. It grows over the other plants, climbs up and grows over the other plants. Now, it's related to our garden cucumber, but the fruits of this one, which are round and spiky, are not edible. In fact, the Native Americans use them for the chemical inside to stun fish in streams and ponds. Supposedly, when the fruits are very ripe, if something were to touch them, they would kind of burst open to scatter the seeds out. from it. And oh, the reason it's also called manroot is that it has very large roots, which I don't know if they really got that big, but like, oh, like the size of a man. So it's not an easy one to dig out when it gets established. This is a chamise, which is Adenostoma fasciculatum. It's a native shrub, and it has very tiny leaves so that it can survive the intense heat and sun without losing too much moisture. So that means we're now clearly into the area called chaparral. Now, chaparral is an environment that grows generally on certain south or west facing slopes where it gets very intense sun that really drives things out during our long dry seasons. And the plants that grow here, there's a number of species, they've adapted to growing in those conditions, things like small leaves or other things they do to help them survive. And you can see that they grow fairly densely in this area, even though it's a fairly harsh environment. As we walk through the chaparral, there's a couple of turkey vultures soaring overhead, and they're very good at using thermals and certain breezes to glide for a long way, so they don't have to use a lot of energy flying. And they're basically looking around. They're vultures, so they're basically going around looking for carcasses of dead animals to nibble on. This is another flower that can be in partial shade or in the sun in the chaparral. This is the sticky monkeyflower. It's a Mimulus aurantiacus, and this is the flower. I'm sorry, it's just a little bit blurred in this photo, but if you were to, I don't know, if you were to like with your fingers squeeze around here, it would almost have, the flower would almost seem to start to stick to itself briefly. It's maybe how it got the name. There is another monkey flower that's yellow colored that grows only along sunny streams. So the sticky monkey flower, which is more diverse in the places it can grow and is much more common. Here's my companion Tatsuya, and we're going up along this ridge where there's kind of chaparral and even some woodland off on one side, and on the sunnier side, that because that's a downslope on the east side, on the sunnier west side, it's either chaparral or grassland. And we're almost to the top of the ridge part. Okay, do you know this native plant that has little bell-like flowers, and then it gets rounded fruit that gave it the name of little apples in another language?
Is it manzanita?
It's definitely manzanita. Manzana is apples in Spanish, and manzanita is little apples because it gets these rounded kind of shiny fruits. And we have dozens of species of manzanita. You can find manzanita in some other places outside California, nearby, outside California, but it's the center of its biodiversity is in California, where there are dozens of species. And they'll do things like, maybe they'll have sort of vertical leaves to cope better with the intense sun and so on, but they generally grow in sunny areas, and they have, in addition to these fairly smooth leaves that don't particularly have teeth on them, it has very smooth, dark red bark, dark red trunks on them. Now, earlier we saw the white ceanothus. This is a light blue ceanothus, which is called the Ceanothus soridiatus. Again, they have almost like a sort of, Glenn Cater describes it as a cornflower, like sweetness to them. But it's a plant that you probably see a lot in people's gardens walking around the Bay Area. So a lot of people were surprised that it's a native plant because it's been planted in so many gardens. Now, this is a relative of the manzanita, which is the madrone. I'm not sure in Spanish. I know in Italian, madrone, the same spelling, madrone means big mother. In any case, it's related to the manzanita. In one way, it's just the way, well, this one, the bark is even more peely than the manzanita, but it peels in different layers, and it's a lighter color than the manzanita. It also has bell-shaped flowers that hang down. but some other features are different from manzanitas, and it's definitely a tree rather than a shrub. This one is a yerba santa, which means holy herb, and it will later get sort of little bit slightly off-color white flowers, kind of trumpet shaped. And when it's the leaves, when it gets pretty hot, the leaves put out some fragrance, but it had medicinal value, which is why it's called the yerba santa. Now, this one is another, I'm going to go out a little bit on a limb. I believe this is another live oak, but it's a different species from the coastal live oak we saw earlier, which is the most common in our coastal areas. There's some oaks like this one that only grow up further inland. And there's two species of live oaks that grow inland in the Bay Area. And I'm going to say that this one is the Quercus chrysolepsis, which is the gold cup oak. And it's one that has the caps on the acorns have almost like a yellow dust inside, and sometimes also found on the leaves. The leaves sometimes have teeth, but often they don't have the teeth. They don't curve down around the sides like the coast live oak. So it's either that one, the gold cup oak, or it's another inland oak, which is the gold cup oak is also called the canyon oak. Well, here we are very near the top of the ridge, and we've used a fair amount of energy, but we've still got some more to go. And growing this area is this flower, which is pretty but deadly. It's the star flowers. I think it's also called Fremont star lily, and it has a bulb that is toxic, but is similar to other flower bulbs that were edible. So when the plant wasn't in flower, Native Americans might dig up this one thinking it was an edible one, and it's not. It's toxic. So it's called death camas is another one of its names. Zygodemus fremonti is actually a scientific name for that death camas. Well, here's another one of the light blue ceanothas, and it's helping to frame a view of Mount Diablo, which is off to the east. So we're getting kind of good views in all directions now. This is a coffee berry, which is not related to coffee, but it has a berry that starts off green, then it turns red, and then it finally gets to a dark brown, and it looks superficially kind of like a coffee bean. So they called it, but the plant is not related to coffee. However, the Native Americans did use it as a tea made from it as a laxative. This is solanum, which is related to deadly nightshade. And the flowers are all drooping down. So the inset photo here, you could see my hand in my walking pole, because I wanted to hold up one of the flowers so you could see the shape of the flower with this yellow center that protrudes out quite prominently. And you may have noticed in the garden that tomatoes and eggplants have very similar flowers because they're all in the same family with deadly nightshade, but we eat eggplants and tomatoes. Okay, well, up ahead there, that's Las Trampas Peak, okay? It doesn't look like Mount Everest or everything. Unfortunately, to get there, you can't see it all, but we've got to go down quite a bit and then up the steep trail on the other side to get to the peak. But let's go ahead and do it. On the way, we can look at a few things. This is California sagebrush, which is pretty common in sunny, dry areas. It has kind of ferny, very soft leaves that are nicely fragrant. It's Artemisia californica. And on this particular one, these are the dried flower stalks from last year's flowers. So they're not the new flowers yet. Now, another Artemisia is this one. This is Mugwort, which is Artemisia douglasiani. Now, the scientific names, they often include the name of the person who first identified them. So there was an early botanist named Douglas, like Douglas fir, for example, I think is the same guy. And this one, though, is called Mugwort, but the leaves look completely different. It's an Artemisia, but the leaves look completely different from sagebrush, which we saw here. okay? But if you if you had the two and you rub them and smelled them, they smell very similarly. It's quite interesting how similar the smell is. Okay, we're up near the peak. So here's another one to identify. It's a kind of sunflower. So do you know the common name for this particular flower? Which I see somebody's putting in a guess.
Yeah, we have one so far. Ooh, I don't know how to say that one. So we have Miles ear or mule's ear. Sorry, mule's ear maybe.
Do you have any others?
And excuse me for butchering this. Withian angustifolia.
Okay, well, they're both correct. That's great. Okay, mule's ear is the common name, and Wyathia angustifolia is the species name for this one. And it's mule's ear because of the leaves. Now the Wyathia angustifolia has these narrower leaves. There's another one, another Wyathia that has wider looking leaves that almost look kind of furry. So they look even more like mule's ear than this one. But it's a sunflower. So the flowers turn, over the course of the day as they follow the sun. Sunflower, not this species, but of course another one that has the great big flowers we're familiar with. That one is the one plant native that I've read anyway. It's the one plant native to the United States, our continental area, that is widely grown as globally as a major agricultural crop, and that's for the seeds and the sunflower oil, of course. All the other major crops, corn, wheat, etc., are not native to the U.S. Well, I saw something like this in my garden when it was gophers until we finally got the gophers to trap them. And I think that's probably what this is as well. The gophers can be pretty damaged in the garden because they'll eat the bulbs and other plants. I had a couple newly planted lupines, and a couple days later they just disappeared, like they got sucked under the ground by the gophers. This is a flower called, we're on the meadow near Las Trampas Peak. This is a flower called cream cups or platystemon. In this particular photo, something about the lighting, whatever, they look kind of dazzlingly white. They're actually not that quite a bright white. It's more of a more subdued cream color, and they have 6 petals. It's a very pleasant looking flower. It's one of those that opens up when it gets nice and sunny, maybe not at the beginning of the day. Okay, here's another one to guess. The common name for the little white flowers you see around here, and the common name is the name of a popular snack food. So I think that gives you a big hint. If you look at them, you can probably guess if you don't know.
Yeah, I think people are coming with popcorn flower.
This is the popcorn flower, and the thing is with the popcorn flowers, well, when the rains are right, there could just be huge numbers of them. There are 2 different species, and I haven't really learned the subtlety of the difference between the 2 species, but these are definitely popcorn flowers. Well, I took a bit of a break here. We brought our lunch along and spread out our cloths, and there you see my old hiking socks and a view, my feet pointing towards Mount Diablo. So we decided we would take a proper picnic with sesame paste dip and cheese and nuts and so on, and had a very nice picnic. And I took about a 10-minute nap afterwards, and we got back on the hiking trail. Okay, so we finally found some California poppies. I mean, it's one of the great things about spring in California poppies that have a great long growing flowering season, and you can easily grow them in your garden, although they spread pretty easily, and so you have to be careful. They're just a great thing about when there's whole hillsides covered in the beautiful orange color. So there's another flower in this picture though, and I wonder if you know the name of this flower that has this sort of magenta color. another grasslands flower. Anyone want to take a guess at that one?
Tana says red maids.
These are red maids, yes. So we had milkmaids, which were white, and these are red maids because it's a magenta version of red. And red maids and poppies share one similar trait is they won't open up right away in the morning. They wait for the sun to come out. If it's really heavily cloudy all day, they may not open all day. I've been on a trail where we went by in the morning at 10 o'clock and there were no maids. And then we came back the trail at 1 o'clock and it was just covered with red maids. They especially like to grow along the edge of the wide trail, or even sometimes in the middle of a trail that's not too heavily used, because I think they're not keen on the tall grass. So from near Las Trampas Peak, we're looking north. So beyond Las Trampas Wilderness, we can see Walnut Creek and Concord and up to Sesson Bay off that way. But we're not actually going to go that way because we need to go back to our starting point. So there we go. We got to go down from Las Trampas Peak and then we got to go up the steep trail on the other side and back through the Chaparral. But you can see the difference between on the west side, it's the lower growing Chaparral, and the east side, there's a lot more trees and it's taller woodland. Okay, there's yet another view of Mount Diablo, but this time we also have some other hills that are here in the foreground, and these are within Las Trampas Regional Wilderness, and these are called the Corduroy Hills, which I don't know is maybe because of the folds in them that they think they look like corduroy. Okay, instead of taking the same trail all the way back, we're going to branch off on the Las Trampas Ridge Trail. So there's the sign. That's the trail that goes back to Bollinger Creek Loop Trail, and this is the trail that goes along Las Trampas Ridge, which goes parallel to Bollinger and higher up than Bollinger Creek. And it's a no bicycle trail, and we hope they will follow that because it's a narrow trail. Okay, well, here's a little farther along the trail. You can see initially we're going through Chaparral, and the trail goes down and then winds its way along here. But over here, we're going to be going through woodland. And Bollinger Canyon with Bollinger Creek is down here. So that's looking across Bollinger Canyon towards Rocky Ridge on the other side, which I think there's that paved road we saw at the beginning from near the trailhead. And I think the actual high point of Rocky Ridge is within the East Bay Mudlands, but if you have a permit, you can hike from there and all the way to San Leandro Reservoir and up the other side. So this is an elderberry, and I think we're going to see another better version of it later, so I'll save to talk about it later. Okay, now we finally into the woodland trail. Oh, you can see some little woodland stars there along the side. Now here's another one to guess. What about this purple flower with the petals swooping back? It's really a lovely flower and a nice early spring flower.
Looks like there's consensus around shooting star.
Shooting stars, yes, because you see it has the central part of the flower sticks out this way, downward, and the petals sweep back upward, which is kind of a fairly unusual form for flowers. So that's why they're called shooting stars. The little white flowers are nemophilia, which means love of sleep, because they grow in the shade. Okay, now this is a real find on this one, a beautiful parasitic flower. And it's somewhat rare, but does anyone want to take a guess on what they might be called?
Elaine guessed warrior or Indian warrior from Tana.
Indian warrior is correct, great. They're related to the much more common Indian paintbrush, and they look sort of similar, and they are both parasites. But the Indian warrior is fussier about what plants it will parasitize, and so it's much rarer, and you tend to find it in shady places. Normally, when we go, and the pedicularis is the scientific name for the plant, pedicularis densiflora, dense flowers, And normally when we go later in April, there either aren't any or there are just a couple few stragglers. Well, this time we went earlier and there were dozens of the Indian warriors. You can't quite see, some of them are back in the shade, but they were all around here in this one area. It was the only place we saw them, and it was in the shady spot along the Las Trampas Ridge Trail. They're really quite spectacular. Okay, one more kind of lupin. This is the bush lupin. So it's a woody shrub, and it lasts for many years. It has somewhat smaller leaves, but the same pattern of the palmate leaves and the same sort of blue flowers. There is also a yellow bush lupin, which you can find in coastal areas like Tamales, near Tamales Point, and they're actually quite fragrant, the yellow ones. I think I'm not sure. I think they may be madrones just because of the way the bare trunk, but not seeing the leaves very clearly. I could be wrong on that one. But I just wanted to show you a bit more of what the trail looks like. Plus, on the right side is another shrub, which is California holly, as also called Christmas berry. It's also known as toyon, and it's called holly because it has those shiny green leaves with tooth along the edge, and it has white flowers in bunches that are then followed by red berries that can persist into winter. But it's not related at all to holly. It just has that name. But because of its appearance, it was called California holly. And when they can grow to tree size, and there was a grove of them in California. So of course they called the place Hollywood. So Tinseltown came because of this tree, this plant, which is called holly, but which isn't really holly. And the berries are edible. The Native Americans used to gather them. So off to the left, there's a trail that goes to those corduroy hills where that we had in a photo earlier. And that can be an interesting side trip if you're ambitious, but we want to get back to our starting point. And so we're not, and that doesn't lead that way. This is kind of an out and back trail. So we're going to keep on the Las Trampas Ridge. And this one I think it kind of threw me because it's low growing. It's not kind of getting tree-like, and the flowers are blooming so early. But I think this is another one of the elderberries. And after these white clumps of flowers, they'll have blueberries, which are, there's two species in the area. This is Sambucus mexicana, which grows in mostly inland. And the blueberries are edible, but it didn't seem that tasty. Maybe you can make a preserve or a wine out of them. On the coastal area, there's a red elderberry that's not edible. In Tilden, I've actually seen both species. So Tilden's kind of between the inland and the coastal fog area. Okay, does anybody know this flower that has 6 what look like petals? It's growing right along the trail.
Is it bluegrass or blue-eyed grass?
Blue-eyed grass, yes. And it's not a grass, it's actually an iris. Okay, it's in the iris family. So these leaves, are not grassy leaves. They're actually like miniature versions of the sword-like leaves you see on most iris plants. And what distinguishes iris is they have 3 leaves and 3 sepals that all look like, 3 petals and 3 sepals that all look like petals. And most irises, you have 3 petals that stick up, and then you have 3 seem like petals that droop down. And the sepal is actually what covers the bud before it opens up. Okay, but it just happens with the iris family that the sepals look very much like the petals. But this is the same. It's hard to say which one is underneath the others. The ones underneath would be the ones that were on the outside. Maybe these are it could be these are the petals and these are the sepals, or the other way around. Anyway, they're very pretty little flowers. It's Syringium bellum is the scientific name. And there's also a yellow-eyed grass, which has yellow flowers. It was amazing. I got this picture because this butterfly was moving very fast and his wings were moving very fast. But I got the butterfly and he's perched on a flower of the blue dicks, which there's several little flowers together in a bunch of very pretty little flowers, spring flowers. And I don't know what kind of butterfly it is. Maybe somebody knows. So in the coastal areas, near the coast, you'll only find the coastal live oak. But inland, you also find the inland live oaks, but then you also find deciduous oaks. And particularly in our area, black oak, blue oak, and maybe some valley oak. And this is the black oak. They can be quite magnificent big trees. Here are the leaves. They're light green in this inset photo because they're just coming out. They'll get a darker green later though. And they all produce acorns, those oaks. Well, we're actually going to turn right now, go down the Chamise Trail and back to our starting point. And there are some very significant rock upgrades. So if we want to go a little further, we could explore and climb out a bit on those rock outcrops. And I'm not sure, but I think from having looked at that plaque at the beginning, these may be marine sandstones. But Ken can correct me if he knows better. In any case, they're very handsome looking rock outcrops. Now, this is something we don't want to see along the trail. I mean, some people say, oh, well, I'm going to pick up the doggy bag on the way back. But I don't think even that they shouldn't be left along the trail. And if you're not going to pick them, absolutely don't put them in plastic. Because the plastic isn't going to break down properly. So I really think it's better if you're going to bring the dog, you should take the doggy bags with you. Well, we're going down the Chamise Trail, and the first part of the trail is basically grassy, and we still have some very nice views off towards Bollinger, Camden, and beyond down to the south. And then later on the right, you can see we get through Chaparral. The trail gets steeper, and even when it's, let's say, not muddy, it can still be slippery when it's dry because there's all this little gravel and loose dirt, and it's very steep. So it's one we need to take significant care getting down. Okay, we're almost down. Here's a switchback that leads down to the park road. The parking staging area is just up. It's just up here. Oh, maybe it's here. I think it's here. Okay. We're even closer because that's my car parked right there. We didn't get there early enough to park in the parking lot. So we have come all the way back. Las Trampas, I think, is one of the great places to go and see different habitats and wildflowers and have views and see flowers in the spring. In the summer, it probably gets pretty hot, although some of the trails are shaded. And I think we have to be really thankful for our Greenbelt in the Bay Area that we have all these wonderful parks to visit. I'm sorry we've run just a few minutes past 11, but if there are any questions, if you want to stick around, I'm happy to answer questions. I wanted to mention one last thing. This isn't one of the hikes, but Janet Byron and I are the authors of the book Berkeley Walks that has lots of 21 self-guided walks in Berkeley and the surrounding areas. It's the second edition is still on sale. And if you go to our website, www.berkeleywalks.com, you can find also, there's another, I think I've got another 18 walks in series of 3 that you can download for free as PDFs that you can print out or use on just about any mobile device. And I'm going to keep adding some more walks. So, but today we were out in the Greenbelt, and I hope you enjoyed. Do you have any questions, anybody?
So it looks like we had one earlier from Pat who asked, what is the difference between a regional park and regional wilderness?
As far as I can tell, Ken may know a better definition, but the regional parks can probably include other things like swimming pools and maybe playgrounds and stuff like that. In the regional wilderness, they try and protect most of it from any of that sort of development. Is that like Sunol is a regional wilderness? Is that, Ken, is that?
True, yeah.
Right. Yeah. The wilderness it's more protected open space, whereas the parks are there's more recreational possibilities. There's also regional shorelines, and there's regional trails. Any other questions? Or?
I haven't seen any others come in yet. Everybody seems to be very happy with the presentation, though.
All right, thank you very much, everyone. I think it's still a nice day, not going to be too hot, so you still have time to get out and get a nice walk in today.
And in 2 weeks, we'll be walking under the redwoods and talking a little about the history and redwood ecology at Muir Woods and redwood ecology in general.
Are you going to lead that one, Ken, or who's leading
Yeah,
it?
yeah.
Are you? Oh, great. Well, Ken's a great leader. He's a lot of fun.
Yeah, and I just want to remind folks who may have missed it at the beginning that this virtual outing was recorded. So we will be sending a follow-up email later today with a link to the recording, and it will also include a link to the website for Bob's Berkeley Walks book. So check out your inbox for that, and we hope you will join us on the 24th for our virtual outing in Muir Woods. And you can see more events and webinars that we have available on our website at greenbelt.org/events. And yeah, we thank everyone for joining us today. It was really fun. Bob, thanks for the interactive portion as well.
Thank you very much, everyone. Bye.